The research vessel Star Seeker drifted silently through the darkness of space, its sleek silver hull reflecting the distant starlight. Inside the ship's main laboratory, Dr. Blue stood frozen in front of the holographic display, his four eyes blinking rapidly in disbelief. His pale green skin had taken on an even lighter shade, a clear sign of shock among his species. "This cannot be correct," he muttered, his upper hands adjusting the sensors while his lower ones gripped the edge of the control panel. "Dr. Red, please verify these readings." Dr. Red, his junior researcher, glided across the room on her hover pad. Her antenna twitched nervously as she examined the data. "Sir, I've run the analysis 3 times already. The readings are accurate. The planet's atmosphere is composed of approximately 21% pure oxygen." Dr. Blue shuddered at the word oxygen. Like all educated beings in the galaxy, he knew oxygen was one of the most corrosive and deadly elements in existence. His people had spent generations developing technology to protect themselves from even the smallest oxygen exposure. "And you're telling me," he said slowly, "that there are advanced life forms living in this toxic soup." The holographic display zoomed in on the blue-green planet designated as Earth. The sensors showed countless heat signatures of large living creatures moving about on its surface. Even more baffling were the artificial structures and electromagnetic signals indicating advanced technology. "They call themselves humans," Dr. Red explained, pulling up intercepted radio transmissions. "And according to our observations, they don't just survive in the oxygen. They need it to live." Dr. Blue moved closer to the display, studying the images of these humans. They were strange bite-built creatures with only 2 arms and 2 eyes. But what fascinated him most was their complete lack of protective gear. They walked around in their oxygen-rich atmosphere wearing nothing but thin layers of artificial fiber. "Have you contacted the Galactic Research Institute?" he asked, already knowing this discovery would shake the foundations of their scientific understanding. "Yes, sir. They thought our equipment was malfunctioning at first." Dr. Red's antenna curled in amusement. "The Institute's director suggested we might have inhaled too much recreational gas." A loud beeping interrupted their conversation. The ship's AI announced, "Unknown vessel approaching. Origin, Earth's surface." Both scientists rushed to the observation deck. Through the reinforced viewing panels, they watched a primitive-looking spacecraft rising from the planet's atmosphere. It was small, barely 1/10 the size of their research vessel. "They're broadcasting a message," the AI informed them. "Play it," Dr. Blue ordered, his hearts beating faster. A calm human voice filled the room. "Unknown vessel, this is Space Station Control. We've detected your presence in Earth orbit. Please identify yourself." Dr. Blue and Dr. Red exchanged looks. First contact protocols were clear, but nobody had ever imagined making first contact with beings who breathed corrosive gas. "Should we respond?" Dr. Red asked, her voice barely a whisper. Dr. Blue straightened his posture. "We must. This could be the greatest scientific discovery since space travel." He activated the communication system, making sure their universal translator was working. "Earth vessel, this is Dr. Blue of the Galactic Research Vessel Star Seeker *. We come seeking knowledge." There was a moment of silence before the human replied. "Welcome, Dr. Blue. Would you be interested in docking with our station for a face-to-face meeting?" Dr. Blue quickly checked their protective suit systems. They were designed for short exposure to trace amounts of oxygen, but they would have to do. "We accept your invitation," he replied, "but we must warn you about our special environmental needs." The human's response was friendly. "Understood. We're used to accommodating different atmospheric requirements. Sending docking coordinates now." As Dr. Red prepared the ship for docking, Dr. Blue began recording his official log. Day 255, Galaxy Standard Time. "We have made first contact with a species that challenges everything we know about biological life. They breathe oxygen, the deadliest of gases, as easily as we breathe normal air. The question is, how? And more importantly, why aren't they dead?" He looked once more at the beautiful blue planet below. Something told him this discovery would change the galaxy forever. The Antarctic Research Station stood like a cluster of white boxes against the endless snow. Inside the station's main airlock, Dr. Brown checked the pressure gauges one final time. His team had hosted visiting scientists before, but never ones from another planet. "All readings normal," he announced to the station crew. Though our guests seemed very concerned about our air composition, through the thick windows, they could see the alien shuttle landing. It was beautiful, a teardrop-shaped craft that seemed to glow with a soft blue light. As it touched down, clouds of snow swirled around its base. "Remember," Dr. Brown said to his team, "they specifically requested we wear our normal clothes. Something about wanting to observe our natural state." The outer airlock door opened, and two strange figures stepped inside. They wore what looked like spacesuits, but more elegant than anything humans had created. The suits were transparent in places, revealing the aliens' green skin and multiple limbs. Dr. Blue's voice came through a speaker in his suit. "Greetings, Earth scientists. Please forgive our protective gear. We find your atmosphere challenging." He paused, watching in apparent horror as Dr. Brown breathed normally. "How are you not burning from the inside?" Dr. Brown blinked in surprise. "Burning? From breathing?" "The oxygen," Dr. Red explained, her antenna visibly twitching even through her suit. "It's highly corrosive. It destroys molecular bonds. It turns metal into rust. How are you surviving direct exposure?" The human scientists looked at each other, trying not to smile. Dr. Brown cleared his throat. "Well, we need oxygen to live. Our cells use it to produce energy. Without it, we would die in minutes." The aliens took a synchronized step backward. Dr. Blue's four eyes widened. "You mean, you deliberately take this destructive element into your bodies, as part of your life process?" "Yes," replied Dr. Brown. "Would you like to see our biology lab? We can show you how it works." The aliens followed the humans through the station, flinching every time someone took a breath. In the biology lab, Dr. Brown set up a microscope with a sample of human blood. "See these red blood cells?" he explained. "They contain hemoglobin, which binds with oxygen and carries it throughout our bodies. Our cells then use that oxygen to break down glucose for energy." Dr. Blue leaned forward, his suited head nearly touching the microscope. "Fascinating. You've evolved to harness the destructive power of oxygen for energy production. But the corrosive effects? Our bodies have natural antioxidants," another scientist explained. "They protect us from oxygen damage." Dr. Red was recording everything with a small device. "This is revolutionary. Your species has not only adapted to survive in a toxic environment, but has made the toxin essential to your survival." Suddenly, an alarm blared from Dr. Blue's suit. "Oxygen leak detected," the suit's computer announced. Both aliens jumped in panic. "Breach level minimal," the computer continued. 0.1% oxygen exposure. No immediate danger." Dr. Blue relaxed slightly, but his pale green skin had turned almost white. "Even this tiny amount makes me nervous. On our world, oxygen exposure is a serious emergency." Dr. Brown thought for a moment. "You know, this could be why we haven't met aliens before. Everyone's been too scared of our atmosphere to visit." "Indeed," Dr. Red agreed. "Many worlds have been marked as toxic due to oxygen presence. We never imagined intelligent life could exist here, let alone thrive." As they continued their tour, Dr. Blue made constant notes. The humans show no signs of distress despite continuous oxygen exposure. They appear to have complete control over this deadly element. Their adaptation raises countless questions about the nature of life itself. Looking at his new human colleagues, Dr. Blue felt a mixture of fear and admiration. These creatures had turned one of the universe's deadliest substances into the very breath of life. Perhaps they had much more to teach the galaxy than anyone had imagined. The grand hall of the Galactic Research Institute buzzed with excitement. Hundreds of scientists from across the galaxy had gathered to hear Dr. Blue's presentation. Some floated in anti-gravity bubbles, others stood on multiple legs, and a few existed as pure energy in containment fields. Dr. Blue stood at the center platform, his presentation ready. The massive screen behind him showed images of Earth and its inhabitants. Distinguished colleagues, he began, what you are about to see will challenge everything we know about biological life. He displayed a video of humans breathing normally. These beings not only survive in oxygen, they require it. The audience erupted in disagreement, and energy being flashed bright red. Impossible. Oxygen destroys organic matter. I thought the same, Dr. Blue replied calmly. Until I saw it myself. He played recordings from the Antarctic station visit. The crowd watched in stunned silence as humans went about their daily tasks, breathing oxygen as naturally as drinking water. From the front row, Professor Green, head of the institute, raised 2 of his 6 hands. This data must be verified under controlled conditions. We need proof. Agreed, Dr. Blue said, which is why we have invited a human volunteer to our facility. The doors at the back of the hall opened. All eyes turned to watch as Tom, the human astronaut, walked in wearing a standard spacesuit. Even through his helmet, they could see his friendly smile. This is Tom, Dr. Blue introduced. He has agreed to help us understand human oxygen requirements. Tom, would you like to say something? Tom's voice came through the translator. Hello, everyone. I'm honored to be the first human to visit your amazing facility. Though I have to admit, your reaction to oxygen is quite surprising to us too. Professor Green floated forward. We have prepared a special chamber for our experiment. It contains our normal atmosphere, which has no oxygen. If you truly need oxygen to survive, this should prove it, though I still find it hard to believe. Tom nodded. I'm ready when you are. The scientists watched as Tom entered the sealed chamber. Dr. Blue monitored his vital signs on a holographic display. We have medical support standing by, he assured everyone. At the first sign of distress, we'll restore his oxygen supply. Tom removed his helmet. Almost immediately, his breathing became labored. The vital sign readings began to flash red. Heart rate increasing, Dr. Red announced. Blood oxygen levels dropping rapidly. The audience murmured in shock as they watched Tom struggle to breathe. After just 30 seconds, he gave the emergency signal. Restore his atmosphere, Dr. Blue commanded. The chamber quickly filled with Earth-like air, and Tom's breathing returned to normal. Professor Green's color had changed to pale yellow, a sign of deep thought among his species. Remarkable. The human actually began to die without oxygen. This violates every principle of xenobiology we know. Tom put his helmet back on and joined the scientists. That was unpleasant, he said with a weak laugh. Now you know how we feel in environments without oxygen. But how? Asked a crystalline being from the back. How did your species evolve to depend on a corrosive gas? We're still learning about our own evolution, Tom replied. But from what we understand, early Earth had very little oxygen until ancient bacteria started producing it as waste. Over billions of years, life on Earth adapted to use this abundant gas as an energy source. Dr. Blue added, this suggests that life can evolve in ways we never imagined possible. We must reconsider every planet we've labeled as toxic due to oxygen presence. Professor Green raised all 6 hands for attention. This discovery changes everything. Dr. Blue, you have my authorization to establish a permanent research station on Earth. We need to understand how humans have mastered this deadly element. As the crowd buzzed with excitement, Tom smiled inside his helmet. He couldn't wait to tell people back home that the aliens thought humans were the scary ones for once. The laboratory aboard the Star Seeker looked more like an art gallery than a science facility. 3-dimensional holograms of human cells floated in the air, spinning slowly to show every detail. Dr. Blue stood in the center, his 4 eyes moving independently to study different displays at once. "Look at this," he said, reaching out to expand one of the holograms. "These structures called mitochondria. They're like tiny power plants inside every cell, and they use oxygen on purpose." Dr. Red glided closer on her hover pad, her antenna twitching with excitement. "The efficiency is incredible. Their cells don't just survive oxygen exposure. They harness its destructive power to break down glucose. It's like using a controlled fire to cook food." Tom, who had been watching from a sealed observation chamber, spoke through the intercom. "That's a good comparison. We actually use the word burn when talking about how our bodies use calories." The aliens turned to look at him with newfound wonder. Through the transparent wall of his chamber, they could see him breathing normally in his oxygen-rich environment, while they remained safe in their oxygen-free laboratory. "But the most fascinating part," Dr. Blue continued, pulling up another hologram, "is their blood." The image showed red blood cells flowing through vessels. These cells contain a molecule called hemoglobin. It doesn't just transport oxygen. It controls it, binds it, makes it safe. A junior researcher named Dr. Purple burst into the lab, almost forgetting to seal the airlock behind him. "Dr. Blue, the genetic analysis is complete." Dr. Blue quickly loaded the new data. A complex strand of DNA appeared in the air, certain sections glowing brightly. "This is revolutionary," he whispered. "The genes for oxygen processing aren't just scattered through their DNA. They're fundamental to their entire biology. Humans didn't just adapt to oxygen. They evolved to depend on it." "But how long did this take?" Dr. Red wondered aloud. "Such a dramatic adaptation." "Billions of years," Tom answered from his chamber. "Earth's early atmosphere had almost no oxygen. Then simple organisms called cyanobacteria started producing it as waste. It was actually Earth's first major pollution crisis." Dr. Blue's skin rippled with color, a sign of intense thought among his species. So oxygen was originally a waste product, and life on Earth adapted to use a pollutant as its primary energy source. "Nature's ultimate recycling program," Tom said with a smile. Suddenly, all four of Dr. Blue's eyes focused on a particular section of the DNA display. "This is unexpected. The genes for oxygen processing appear to be incredibly stable. They've developed multiple backup systems to protect these functions." "Of course," Dr. Red exclaimed, "because without oxygen processing, they would die in minutes. Any mutation that disrupted these systems would be quickly eliminated by natural selection." Dr. Purple, who had been quietly analyzing data in the corner, spoke up. "There's more. Look at their cellular repair mechanisms. They don't just protect against oxygen damage. They use controlled oxygen exposure to trigger healing responses. It's like they've tamed a destructive force and turned it into a tool." Tom watched the aliens' excitement with amusement. "You know, we've always been more worried about not getting enough oxygen. The idea that most alien life sees it as deadly. That's going to change how we think about space exploration." "It changes everything," Dr. Blue agreed. "We need to rewrite every textbook on xenobiology. The very thing we thought made a planet uninhabitable might be essential for some forms of life." He turned to face his team. "Send this data to the Galactic Research Institute immediately, and prepare a detailed report on human cellular repair mechanisms. If we can understand how they control oxygen at the molecular level, we might be able to develop new protective technologies." Dr. Red finished his thought. "Or even medical treatments." As the alien scientists rushed to compile their findings, Tom sat back in his chamber and took a deep breath of oxygen-rich air. Sometimes, he thought, the most amazing discoveries come from the things we take for granted. The Grand Council chamber of the Galactic Alliance was in chaos. Representatives from 100 worlds argued loudly, their voices translated into dozens of languages by floating communication orbs. The chamber's massive crystal dome reflected the colors of various species as they changed hues with emotion. At the center podium, Ambassador White of the Security Council raised all four of his tentacles for silence. "Order. We must maintain order." The room gradually quieted. On the main display screen, images of Earth and its humans played in a loop, showing them walking freely in their oxygen-rich environment. The discovery of oxygen-breathing life forms changes the balance of power in our galaxy, Ambassador White continued. We must decide how to respond. From the military section, General Gray's crystalline form pulsed with red light. These humans are naturally equipped to survive in what we consider lethal conditions. They could potentially walk through our most secure facilities with minimal protection, while we need sealed suits just to visit their world. Exactly, shouted Representative Black from the Trade Federation. And what about our oxygen containment protocols? We've spent fortunes protecting against something they breathe freely. Our entire safety standards need to be reconsidered. Dr. Blue stood at the scientific delegation's platform, trying to calm the fears. The humans have shown no hostile intentions. They're as surprised by our oxygen sensitivity as we are by their oxygen dependency. But they're dangerous by their very nature, General Gray insisted. They survive in corrosive environments that would kill most of us in minutes. Their entire planet is surrounded by a poison atmosphere that they call safe. Tom, watching from a sealed observation booth, pressed the communication button. If I may speak. After receiving a nod from Ambassador White, he continued, we understand your concerns, but consider this. We're just as vulnerable in your environments as you are in ours. We need oxygen to live. Without it, we die quickly, as your experiments proved. The chamber grew quiet as they considered this. A floating energy beam from the Education Council glowed softly. Perhaps this is an opportunity, not a threat. Think of what we could learn from each other. Dr. Red, who had been analyzing data at a side console, spoke up. The human ability to process oxygen could revolutionize our technology. Their biological mechanisms for controlling corrosive elements are far more advanced than our mechanical ones. And what if they share this ability with others? General Gray demanded. What if they help other species adapt to oxygen environments? That's not how biology works, Dr. Blue explained patiently. Their oxygen adaptation took billions of years to evolve. It can't simply be copied or transferred. Ambassador White raised his tentacles again. I propose a compromise. We establish a special diplomatic and scientific exchange program with Earth under careful security protocols. We learn from each other while maintaining appropriate safety measures. The chamber erupted in discussion again, but this time the tone was different. Representatives began discussing potential benefits. New medical treatments based on human biology, improved protective technologies, vast new areas of scientific research. There's another factor to consider, Tom added. We've discovered that many planets we considered inhabitable might support life. The galaxy could be far more diverse than anyone imagined. Dr. Blue nodded enthusiastically. Yes, we need to completely revise our understanding of what makes a planet habitable. The humans prove that even environments we consider toxic can foster intelligent life. Finally, Ambassador White called for a vote. The results appeared as floating numbers above the chamber. 70% in favor of peaceful exchange, 20% wanting more restrictions, 10% still uncertain. The motion passes, Ambassador White announced. We will establish formal relations with Earth, with appropriate safety protocols for both sides. As the chamber began to empty, Dr. Blue approached Tom's booth. Well, that went better than expected. Tom smiled. Yes, though I never thought breathing would become a diplomatic issue. In the galaxy, Dr. Blue replied, everything can be a diplomatic issue. But at least now we can work together to understand each other better, even if we have to do it through airlocks. Emergency alarms blared throughout the Galactic Research Institute. Dr. Blue rushed down the corridor, his 4 eyes scanning multiple data screens floating around him. Behind him, Tom ran to keep up, wearing his protective suit. How bad is it? Tom asked through his suit's communicator. Very bad, Dr. Blue replied. The militant coalition has stolen our research data on Earth's atmosphere. They're planning to use oxygen as a weapon. They burst into the emergency command center. Dr. Red was already there, her antenna bent with stress as she studied a giant holographic map of the galaxy. Red dots showed the locations of Coalition warships. "They don't understand," she said without looking up. "They think they can just release oxygen into enemy atmospheres and recreate Earth-like conditions. But it's not that simple." Tom moved closer to the map. "No, it's not. Earth's oxygen cycle took billions of years to develop. You can't just dump oxygen into an atmosphere and expect it to work." The door slid open again as Professor Green floated in. "The Coalition has already launched their first attack. They released oxygen containers into the atmosphere of Trading Post 7. Everyone watched the incoming data from the trading post. The Coalition's plan was already going wrong. The released oxygen wasn't staying in the atmosphere. It was rapidly binding with other elements, creating dangerous compounds. "This is basic chemistry," Dr. Blue exclaimed in frustration. "Oxygen is highly reactive. Without the proper biological systems to regulate it, it's just causing chaos." "Look," Tom pointed at the new readings. "The oxygen is creating rust on all the metal structures. And those orange clouds. That's not Earth's oxygen cycle. That's just random oxidation." Dr. Red's instruments began picking up distress signals. The Coalition's own troops aren't protected properly. Their suits aren't designed for this kind of oxygen exposure. They didn't even understand what they were dealing with. Professor Green moved to the communication console. "We need to stop this now. More ships are preparing to launch similar attacks. They think they're using some kind of super weapon, but they're just creating environmental disasters." Tom stepped forward. "Let me talk to them. Maybe if they understand how Earth's oxygen system really works, they'll realize their mistake." The others looked at him uncertainly, but Professor Green nodded and opened a channel to the Coalition fleet. Tom's voice echoed across space. "Coalition forces, this is Tom, human representative. You're making a dangerous mistake. Earth's oxygen isn't a weapon. It's part of a complex system that took billions of years to develop. What you're doing now isn't recreating Earth's atmosphere. You're just causing random oxidation damage that's as dangerous to you as it is to your targets." There was a long pause. Then a gruff voice responded, "Explain." Tom continued, "On Earth, oxygen is constantly regulated by living things. Plants produce it, animals use it, and countless microorganisms help maintain the balance. Without this living system, oxygen just becomes a destructive force. You're not wielding Earth's power. You're just releasing a dangerous chemical." Dr. Blue quickly added his own message. "Our sensors show your troops are already experiencing suit failures. The oxygen is corroding their equipment faster than expected. You need to evacuate them immediately." Minutes passed as they waited for a response. Finally, the Coalition commander spoke. We are pulling back our forces. Our weapons teams report the oxygen is behaving unpredictably. This weapon is too dangerous to control." Relief flooded the command center. Dr. Red's antenna relaxed slightly as she watched the Coalition ships retreat on the map. "Sometimes," Tom said quietly, "the best way to stop someone from misusing a weapon is to help them understand how it really works." Professor Green turned all his eyes to Tom. "Indeed. Perhaps this incident will help everyone understand that Earth's oxygen isn't just a dangerous element. It's part of a living system that deserves study, not weaponization." As they began organizing cleanup efforts for Trading Post 7, Dr. Blue made a note in his research log. "Today we learned that you cannot simply copy one part of Earth's ecosystem. Everything is connected, and nature's solutions are far more complex than they appear." 1 year after the oxygen weapon crisis, the Earth Research Center stood completed on the outskirts of the Antarctic Research Station. The massive complex was split into 2 sections, one filled with Earth's oxygen-rich atmosphere for humans, and one without oxygen for alien scientists. Between them, a series of advanced airlocks allowed both species to work together safely. Dr. Blue stood in the main conference room, watching through a transparent wall as human and alien scientists collaborated on various projects. Some worked on improving protective suits, while others studied Earth's complex oxygen cycle. "Hard to believe it's only been a year," Tom said, approaching from the human side of the facility. "Remember when you first discovered us and thought we were impossible?" Dr. Blue's skin rippled with amusement. "I still have the recording of my first log entry. I was convinced my sensors were malfunctioning when they showed life forms breathing oxygen." Dr. Red glided up to them on her hover pad, carrying a stack of holographic data chips. "The latest results from the global survey are in. We've identified 57 more planets with oxygen-based ecosystems similar to Earth's." "Any signs of intelligent life?" Tom asked eagerly. "Not yet," she replied. "But we're finding complex organisms on several worlds. It seems the oxygen-breathing pathway you humans follow isn't as rare as we thought. We just never thought to look for it before." Professor Green floated into the room, his usually pale color bright with excitement. "The Medical Council has approved our new protective suit design. It uses principles learned from human cell membranes to better control oxygen exposure. Emergency response teams across the galaxy are already requesting units." Tom smiled. "And our space program has benefited too. Understanding how your ships handle different atmospheres has helped us design better vessels for exploring oxygen-poor environments." Dr. Blue moved to the center of the room and activated the main display screen. Images appeared showing the progress of their various projects. New environmental suits, advanced atmospheric processors, and studies of Earth's oxygen-producing plants. "But the most important discovery," he said, "wasn't about oxygen at all. It was about perspective. We assumed that anything different from us was impossible or dangerous. We nearly started a war because we couldn't imagine life working differently from our own." "The oxygen weapon incident taught everyone a valuable lesson," Dr. Red added. "Nature's solutions are too complex to be simply copied or weaponized. They need to be understood and respected." Tom nodded. "And now the galaxy is a bit more open-minded. Who knows what other kinds of life we might discover out there?" Professor Green extended a data tendril toward the display, bringing up a new image, a map of unexplored star systems. "The Galactic Council has approved a joint human-alien expedition program. We'll be searching for new forms of life together, combining our different perspectives and abilities." "Speaking of which," Dr. Blue said, "my latest paper is ready for publication." He projected the title into the air. "Oxygen: From Poison to Power. How Human Biology Revolutionized Our Understanding of Life." "That's quite a title," Tom laughed. "Though I still find it funny that our ordinary breathing shocked the entire galaxy." "Science progresses by challenging our assumptions," Dr. Red observed. "Sometimes the most revolutionary discoveries come from simply looking at something familiar in a new way." The facility's day cycle began to dim, creating an artificial sunset visible through the huge windows. Outside, the Antarctic snow reflected the changing lights, creating a beautiful display of colors. Dr. Blue made one final entry in his research log. "1 year after first contact, we've learned that the diversity of life is far greater than we imagined. Humans taught us that what we consider impossible might be essential for others. As we continue to explore the galaxy together, I wonder what other amazing discoveries await us. After all, if beings can evolve to breathe poison and turn it into their source of life, what else might be possible out there among the stars?" Tom took a deep breath of oxygen-rich air and smiled. "Sometimes the most remarkable things in life are the ones we take for granted, even breathing."